And what does my mentor do besides bring me roses?
I do my best to take care of you.
You really want to take care of me in that arena? Start by thinking I can actually win.
I'm Lucky Flickerman, first ever host of the Hunger Games.
Enjoy the show.
5, 4,
Enjoy the show.
3, 2.
Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Read, Watch, Play, your dive into the stories we love and how they're adapted. We are coming to you live from the Capitol. This is episode 8, covering The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. My name is Randy Barrage. He told me not to say this, but I'm here with my lucky flickerman, Nick Hinkson. Here we go.
I have never been more disrespected in my entire life when you just said that.
But you stole the show.
What are you doing? He was such a prick. What do you think of me?
You steal the show on this podcast, and Lucky stole the show in the movie.
God, he was, oh man, he is the worst.
But also the best.
He was very entertaining to watch. I thought that was a great performance there. I will give you that.
Yeah. Yeah, and until you just reminded me before we started, I completely forgot that Caesar, Stanley Tucci in The Hunger Games, is also a flickerman. So I'm glad that the flickermans continue their legacy.
And that was a long legacy, because this was the first one where there was commentators or an announcer, or a host. This is the first one where there was a host, and it's 10. And Katniss's games are 74, which means Flicker Games. A flickerman was the host for like 63 years of the Hunger Games.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Right?
I mean, honestly, why would you not want to be him? So yeah, I mean, we are talking The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is a prequel story of the Hunger Games franchise. So we have another entry into the famed villain. We have another entry into the famed villain origin story, starting here with covering President Snow from the Hunger Games trilogy. These are big time lately. A lot of people love an origin story. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I'm actually, speaking of villain origin stories, I'm going to give the listeners a little taste of yours. You might.
I do gravitate to the villains.
You might know what I'm talking about, and if you do, chime in here. But this very distinct and painful, physically painful memory I have of you is I want to say this was like right after we turned 21 and we came home for the summer for college, because I'm pretty sure this is one of the first times you and I got to go to a bar together legally. And I just remember we're sitting there, I'm talking to like Kevin and Mark, and you're like, yo, Nick, come on, let's take a shot. And I was like, duh, of course. Like, do you know me?
Yeah.
And then you look at the bartender and you just say, can I get 2 tequila shots? And she goes, like, yeah, you want some salt? You want lime? You want it chilled? And the most serious I've ever seen you in my entire life, you looked her dead in the eyes and go, no. And she looked at me and I look at her. We both look at you, and you just stood there like you were set in that. So she goes, okay. And she brings over these 2 brown tequila shots, which you always got to shoot clear tequila. But, 21.
You prefer reposado.
You're wrong again. You're wrong. And we cheers, we throw it back. And the next thing I know, my world is spinning. I'm holding on to the bar for dear life. And all of a sudden my face feels like it's on fire. And I'm just like, what happened? I'm like looking around like, what happened? And I just look at you, and you've got this little devilish grin on your face. And then I'm like, oh my God, Randy just smacked the shit out of me. Like, Randy just put me on the ground in this bar. I'm like looking around. Did anybody else see that? I get up. I'm about to go full WWF on you. I'm going to get on the bar, come at you from the top rope with the people's elbow. And you just throw your hands up like you didn't do anything wrong. And you're like, you're not thinking about the shot though, are you? And I stopped. wasn't thinking about the shot, but I was still thinking about how much my face hurt in that moment. And what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, I said in the Dune pod that I love a villain with a point. And this is a classic example of this isn't my origin story. This is the Nick Tequila origin story. Because now that's your go-to move. So you're welcome, actually. I had a point, and look where we're at now.
I want to put out there that my go-to move is tequila shots, not smacking people after a tequila shot.
But now you like them.
Big distinction there.
Yeah. You're just like, the little baby with hiccups that you got to scare, and then they get over the hiccups. I had to just get you over that. I had to get baby Nick Hinkson over this fear, and now he likes them.
I don't know if I agree, but we'll go.
Yeah. Speaking of, well, I guess there's no actual, I was thinking there's no, what's his name from the OG Hunger Games? Haymitch? We don't have any kind of Haymitch indulging. We do have a bit of alcohol. It kind of plays a role at the end of this book.
Well, we're covering that later this year, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think spoiler alert, yeah, like we are going to likely do a Hunger Games episode at this point. Without divulging too much, were you a fan of the original Hunger Games?
Oh yeah, huge fan. This new entry was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
I actually
did you read
Hunger Games?
Yeah.
I remember it was you, me, and my mom, I think, and we were at the bookstore that's behind the
Borders.
No. Yeah, Borders.
Yeah, Borders. Yeah.
My mom was like, "Hey, do you want this is like a really popular book. It's like right as the first one came out. And do you want, would you be interested?" And you had already read it and you talked it up big time. So then that's when I picked it up and really enjoyed the trilogy from there.
Yeah. Did you read all the books, see all the movies?
Yeah. I'm 4 for 4 on both.
Nice.
I don't know if there's any short stories or any more that goes into this world.
So.
I stepped away from it after reading the original trilogy and just watched the movies until this book came out. But
all right, let's hit some plugs and housekeeping.
No, but obviously, Randy, we're on Spotify and Apple, the two major categories. Hopefully that with this episode, you'll be able to find some clips on YouTube. We will put a link in the description for you if that's up. Also, follow us on Instagram. We will post about upcoming episodes. You can get a little behind the scenes. We're going to post our schedule coming up for the next quarter. And we'd love to hear from you. Anytime you want to comment or write to us on Instagram, we're definitely going to include it in the episodes. Hearing from you guys is awesome. And, please feel free to do that. Or you can email us at readwatchplay@gmail.com, Randy?
Rewatchplaypod@gmail.com.
There you go. What Randy said.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of does it for housekeeping. Notes on spoilers. We're going to be spoiling this book and movie, especially as we get deeper into the pod. At the start here, we'll probably not be too much in spoiler territory as we just kind of talk about, what we liked about the book and movie. It will be at a little bit more of a higher level. So if you just kind of want to get a little taste of if you think you want to step into this, I'd say the beginning is safe. I'll put in the show notes kind of like where we start moving into more spoiler stuff. We're probably also going to spoil in some fashion the Hunger Games. I'm sure looking back to the original series, we'll definitely be talking about it as we compare it. And especially as we just talk about the main character of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I'm sure we're just going to spoil the Hunger Games. So
absolutely.
Maybe if that's something you're holding out for, maybe go listen to something else. Still follow the show or listen to us, but maybe go listen to something else.
And Randy, I think the statute of limitations has expired on spoilers for the original trilogy, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't seen that, I mean, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? When did I don't even remember when the first one came out.
2012, I think.
Okay, so 12 years. Yeah, you've had...
that was the first movie. The book came out in...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I mean, the first movie.
Yeah.
You've had...
The movie was 12
years. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to kind of getting into our thoughts on this book. First, kind of giving a summary of it, the sort of judging a book by its cover section. Once again, just going to read the cover of this book.
Yeah.
Let you know what it says. Because, I tried to write it and it wasn't as good. I'm over 3 on that. It is the morning of the reaping that will kick off the 10th annual Hunger Games. In the capital, 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow is preparing for his one shot at glory as a mentor in the games. The once mighty House of Snow has fallen on hard times, its fate hanging on the slender chance that Coriolanus will be able to outcharm, outwit, and outmaneuver his fellow students to mentor the winning tribute. The odds are against him. He's been given the humiliating assignment of mentoring the female tribute from District 12, the lowest of the low. Their fates are now completely intertwined. Every choice Coriolanus makes could lead to favor or failure, triumph or ruin. Inside the arena, it will be a fight to the death. Outside the arena, Coriolanus starts to feel for Lucy Gray, his doomed tribute, and must weigh his need to follow the rules against his desire to survive no matter what it takes.
Isn't it? I have Coriolanus is how you pronounce that.
Dude,
from the movie. I wrote it
after I saw the movie, I realized
Medic.
I was pronouncing everyone's name wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not changing. It's Coriolanus to me.
Okay.
You can say it however, Mr. Flickerman over there wants to. I'm speaking my truth with these names.
Oh, a little DV moment, huh? Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, summary wise, this is a prequel story to the Hunger Games. It is President Snow, who we knew from the Hunger Games, and it's him as a young adult during the 10th annual Hunger Games. What is it? 64 years before, I think.
Yes. 60. Yes. Because this was the 10th and Katniss is the 74th games.
Yeah. So 64 years before. I mean, these games are still in its infancy. So we kind of see a little bit of the rebellion parts, a lot of flashbacks to, I actually always call him Corio. I don't know if I just think I'm Tigris, but a lot of flashbacks to the rebellion. We get a lot of the early Hunger Games. And then we also just see a little bit of the seeds of not only where Snow ends up when we meet him in the Hunger Games, but also just where this world was and how it grew to be. Mm-hmm. I gotta say, what'd you think of this book?
I really liked it. Goodreads, probably 3.5 to 4 out of 5. I'm kind of in between. It's definitely better than a 3. I think it's a 4 for me, but I haven't definitively decided where I'm going to put it yet.
Yeah.
One of the things that Suzanne Collins really did is, well, in my opinion, is she immediately draws you back into the familiar world of the Hunger Games. When she included things like the Avoxes, like right off the bat, from like page 1, you're talking about Avoxes. I'm like, oh my God, this is, and you're in the Capitol, you're bringing it, it's bringing it back for me. Mm-hmm. Really enjoyed that. I don't know if I caught this before, but I thought like with Reaping Day being July 4th and distinctly calling out Pan Am as being North America, I don't know if this is because of how old I was when I read the books or it was a little bit more vague. I didn't think that it was just like North America that we were talking about. I thought it was more of a metaphor for like the entire globe and globalization. So that was cool to get a little bit more clarity there. I think when I was reading it, I was really excited to see the visuals that the movie were going to give us, because the movies did a great job the first time. And the way she describes this post-war capital and District 12, I was like, we're building on these familiar worlds. Love that. The other things I had was that there's a lot of nods to the original trilogy and a lot of things where you can clearly see that she put this wasn't just some random story to build on the world. It wasn't a money grab. It was a real value add to the world of the Hunger Games. One of the, not a favorite quote of mine, but one of the instances of this is when Grandman was saying that it only takes a handful to get the world out. It's just the kind of story that catches fire. And they're talking about come on, like that is perfect.
Yeah, I think she names drops every title at some point. I wrote the page numbers down.
You wrote it. Oh, you wrote them down. Okay, I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you got to tell me
Yeah.
that. And then the last thing I had that we already kind of mentioned is you and I, when these books came out, were squarely in that YA target range. We
Yeah.
grew up in the perfect time to consume this trilogy. I think this book stays in that category, but I also think it's a little bit more dove into some heavier themes, such as, you know, drug addiction, surviving during war, you know, with the
Yeah.
whole leg scene,
I mean, there's some very startling, like,
imagery.
violent
Yeah.
imagery, not even like violence, like combat within the arena, like completely agnostic of arena stuff. There's some very
Right.
tough aspects of this.
Yeah, but at the same time, it stayed in that. For the most part, it stays in that target audience range, which I thought that's a really delicate balance, and Suzanne Collins nailed it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in part 2, with, you know, the more of Lucy Gray singing, I thought that was great. I love that in the movie as well, and it added a lot of depth to the original trilogy, which is what I think a prequel should do.
Yeah.
And reading the book, not even like take the movie out of it. Reading the book, I immediately wanted to reread the trilogy and rewatch the movies. It put me right back where I was excited about it again.
Yeah. What was your mindset heading into this? Were you curious? Were you nervous that, you know, are we like, what was your mindset heading into the book, kind of
Yeah.
coming back to the world?
Before Suzanne smacked me with the force of 1,000 Randys, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
I when I bought the book, this came out in what, 2020, 2021?
2020. Yeah.
And I think it was 2021 when I bought the book. I didn't buy it right away. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I did not.
But I was nervous. And by the end of maybe 10 pages in, I was like, okay, I think we're rocking and rolling here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what about, I mean, what did it, that was a really long rant for me about the book. I think you have similar views, but like, what did it for you, or what didn't do it for you when you were reading this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll be straight up. Like, I think the book is better than it has any right to be. And I don't mean that like as a slight to Suzanne, but sometimes just returning to the well can feel forced, and it can feel a little bit like they're trying to cash in again. And I think when we get to the background, there's some of that underneath all this. So I was really hesitant, and I was like, is the Hunger Games going to resonate for me again the way it did when I was in my, honestly, late teens? I was maybe 18, 19 when this first book came out. I was a much different target demographic then. I was a much different time of my life.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to maybe fall flat. And I legit tore through the first 2/3 of this book. I am embarrassed to admit I didn't even know that this had come out in 2020. I mean, there was a lot going on then, but I had no idea, like literally none. And once I heard sort of the movie buzz, I got a little bit curious and picked up the book. But I mean, I thought coming back to the Hunger Games world, it was more enjoyable than I expected. And I thought the world building was really fun. I thought that the characters she introduced were really well thought out and brought some excitement to me as I was reading. And, you know, we said it at the top, you know, this is tracing the origin of President Snow from the modern version. And we're getting to see him in his sort of school setting with his sort of classmates, his cousin and his grandmother that he lives with. And then, you know, the main other sort of cast of characters are the people leading the Hunger Games at that time and the tributes. So it's kind of a similar character structure to the original Hunger Games. And I thought that the characters that they put in the world were really exciting. And like, it was a lot of fun to spend more time in the capital. And I actually think Coriolanus, however you say his name, was pretty compelling to read from the perspective of, you know, he's obviously nowhere sort of near this level of writing, but there was like this essence of Jack Torrance from The Shining, where you're reading him, where you're getting this, what he's telling himself he wants to do and the good person he wants to be is there. But then you see his actions really slip through into these sort of ambitious, power seeking things, and he justifies it and he rationalizes it. And I thought she wrote him extremely well and did a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good.
I have a couple labored Star Wars metaphors I'm trying to pull in here, but yeah, very Anakin-esque there.
Yeah.
What did you think of the epilogue? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Go for it.
No, finish your thought, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah. The only things I would say is to kind of close out is she did a great job of making you curious what the match strike was going to be, that you see the birth of the villain. And I was very interested in it. The whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, something is going to happen to his tribute, Lucy Gray, who he's falling for, or something is going to happen to his cousin, Tigris, who I really, really enjoyed in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of fooled me by the end, where I'm like, there's not a single moment, even though there are crescendos to a moment. You realize, no, this is just like a dude who has some real ambitious power-seeking tendencies and can be extremely toxic. And he was more so fighting a little bit with himself through the book to be a good person, when really that kind of tendencies were there the whole time. And I was like, damn, Suzanne, you kind of really led me along here, waiting for this huge moment when it kind of didn't totally come, even though, like I said, there is a climax. So I thought that was really well done. Some stuff did not work for me in the book. I'll be honest, it slowed down for me in the final third, and I didn't love the end, but I completely understand why she had to do it, because you can't just run the same story, starting with the reaping, ending with who wins the Hunger Games. Like, I respect that she had to do something different, and she really surprised me with the twist. But it didn't quite work for me.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that, because you said you tore through the first 2/3, and I was wondering about the third. But then, I guess on that note, what did you think of the epilogue?
I'm trying to think. Remind me, what is the epilogue in the book?
The epilogue is where he goes to see Dean Highbottom again after he comes back with C. Janice's stuff, and he gives him the morphling.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fine. I don't know. For some reason, I will admit I got to the final third around the holidays, and I was a much more stop-start with my reading then, just because there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
But something just didn't completely work for me to close out the book. And I had similar thoughts, movie-wise, and I think it showcased a little bit more why it didn't work for me. But the end just fell a little bit flat, and that doesn't negate the enjoyment I had of this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, because I don't think you can give half stars on Goodreads.
You can't. Real
which is
problem
annoying.
with Goodreads.
Really, talk about minor grievance. But I don't know. How did the final third of the book work for you in the epilogue?
I actually have to disagree with you completely here. I really liked the third act of this book, and the reason I really liked the third act of this book is because in the first 2 acts, he's teetering on trying to do right, but also drawn to the dark side, if you will.
Yeah.
And the final third is where you see him just start leaning, fall. And then he's there. And then you have the epilogue that comes in and packs. It's a haymaker of an epilogue, I think, because it shows the final descent into the President's Snow that you're used to seeing from the first trilogy. And I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that. I walked away from reading the epilogue going, this is it. That was it. Like, that was the moment of the book right there. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That's how I came away from that.
Yeah, were there any things throughout the book that did not work for you? You know, if that is kind of like was the peak for you, did anything not land?
I will say I thought the part 3 of the book was a little bit longer than it needed to be. It didn't work. I will say, and I don't know if we're about to jump into the movie, but part 3 didn't work for me in the movie, but it did work for me in the book. And I think one of the things that the book did really well, and actually I was talking to a listener about this. One of the things that the book did really well that the movie didn't do well is you lose that inner monologue of Snow throughout the movie. And it's really hard to put that in a movie. And I'm not trying to.
It's impossible.
You just lose it. And you lose two things there. You lose one, you learn that he is a skilled political operator from a very young age, and he's playing chess when other people are playing checkers. And the other thing you really learn there is that you lose a lot of the morality struggle that he's having. So then it just kind of, when you lose that train of thought and he's like, do I leave? Do I not leave after, he shoots the mayor's daughter? Like, you just lose a lot of that struggle. And I think it makes the character fall a little bit flatter in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's tough. It's the difference of mediums. You can't sort of slide into, when I think that is the most compelling part of the book, at least for me, was that inner sort of struggle that Koryo is having. It's hard to replicate that on screen.
It really is.
Anything else kind of book-wise that you want to shout out that you think went well, didn't go well? How did the sort of relationship with Lucy and Koryo work for you?
In the book, I thought it worked great.
Yeah.
In the book, I thought, because you get those inner monologues, you see a lot more of his mind and how he's feeling and how his feelings for her are dictating these actions, which, then comes back around in part 3 into the epilogue, into who we ultimately know as President Snow. But to the first part of your question, there's 3 things in this that I thought added a lot of depth to the original trilogy. One is Lucy Gray and the song about the hanging tree, and learning more about the origins of that and having that be here really changes how I look at the original trilogy, I think. The second one is learning more about the history of the Mockingjay and its ties to the war effort and how much Snow hates them right off the bat, right? And how they freak him out, they trigger him because and then that changes how you see it when you talk about it, when he's talking about it, and when he has to go back to District 12 in the second and third books to talk to Katniss. And the exploration of areas in District 12 and the capital that we haven't seen before, and from that world building perspective that you brought up earlier, I thought that was really great for me. So those are just my last thoughts on the book. But if you had to pick one moment, Randy, like one moment in the book that you were like floored, or where it made it so you had to read the next chapter, like, what is that moment for you?
Yeah, I think if I was to put my finger on when I felt in, I think the structure of the book, are they called parts? Is it like a part 1, part 2, part 3? Might be the end of part 1, where Koryo and Lucy are in one of their tribute mentor sort of meetings that even you see a lot, with Haymitch and Katniss in the original series, where they're meeting, and it closes the part, I believe, with sort of Koryo thinking, I could actually do this. Like she could win, or I can't remember if that's his inner thought, something to that effect. And he starts asking her, like, what can I do to help? And, she says back to him, he could start by thinking I could win this. And it was the first time I really thought, like, this might not be going the way I think it's going to go, where what converts him to a villain is Lucy dying. She could still be setting you up that way, but it also, I don't know, to me as a reader, I was like, I don't know, there's 2 ways she can come out of this. Either Lucy's going to win, or Lucy is going to tragically die, and this is going to convert Snow into a villain. And it really pulled me into and made me realize that, yeah, I kind of care about what's going to happen with Lucy. She was written extremely well in the book, and I started to really pull for her too, and wanted her to do well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay.
Was there a moment for you?
I couldn't put down part 2. I think I read part 2 in about 2 days.
Yeah.
Maybe less, honestly. I needed to know what happened in those games, and it's kind of the same thing for you, is wondering, does Lucy come out of this or not? Because when you have a villain origin story and we don't already know what that trigger was, you're right. There was a lot of gray area as to what that event was going to be, and I wasn't convinced Lucy was coming out of those games.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to ground myself, but even the listeners, part 1 basically runs up through him getting his tribute, some even early Snow childhood stuff up through that moment we just talked about at these interviews, sort of still pre-Hunger Games stuff with Lucy. Part 2 goes from that point through to when in the book. Is that?
I think part 2 ends with Lucy winning the games, and then Corio getting assigned to be a peacekeeper and going to District 12.
Yeah. I mean, and at this point, moving, fully into spoilers, yeah, you kind of hit this huge twist heading into part 3, where he gets sent out to District 12. And I think that is a feat of this book where that shocked me, like absolutely
Really?
shocked. I could not believe that was where the story went.
Okay.
I was just as surprised as Corio in High Bottom's office, realizing you're getting shipped out to District 12 to be a peacekeeper. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. No, I didn't see it coming either. I'm saying that, like, oh, really? Like, yeah. I didn't see it either. When I found out he was going to be a peacekeeper, I did see the District 12 thing coming. But the fact that they caught him and that was his punishment was a good twist for me.
Yeah. I thought he was gonna snake his way out somehow. But yeah, and I just kind of thought maybe the 3rd chapter is more of seeing his rise within the Capitol post Hunger Games, and him trying to like maintain this relationship with Lucy in the Capitol while trying to also advance his career, by he's trying to win some tuition prize at school because his family's actually starting to become quite extremely poor, and they're hiding it through the whole book. So yeah, I was, if part 3 did anything, and I'll give it some credit, it completely floored me on the direction it went.
What worked or didn't work for you? I mean, we just talked about the book a lot. Now the adaptation, what worked or didn't work in the movie for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. Not a revelation, for me. I thought it was pretty good. I think I gave it like a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Okay.
I had a similar journey as the book where I enjoyed the beginning. I was having a good time through the first 2/3. The last third, didn't really land for me. And you said that also kind of didn't work for you in the movie.
Yeah.
I think overall to that, it was almost like the big emotional beats of the movie just didn't hit for me in a convincing way that they did in the book.
Yeah.
There's something that and this is, I thought the movie was fine. Like this, I'm not saying like I thought this was a bad movie. In the beginning, the first 5 to 10 minutes, I actually was thinking, I was like, wow, this is really bad. But then it actually settled in a little bit, and I started to really enjoy the performances and where they were taking it. And it was just really fun to see a lot of that Capitol stuff represented. And I thought in particular, what's his name? Tom Blythe, who played Corio. I thought it was really great. But it's just like the big sort of story beats they were trying to hit just totally didn't work for me, especially as we got to the end. But I thought it was fun. It was a good time. It's not something I'm going to rewatch, but I enjoyed being back in the Hunger Games. There were some like I said, outside of Tom, there were some other standout performances that I really thought were great. They pulled in, similar to the Hunger Games, they pulled in a great cast for this and got some like a mix of some unknown quantities on the younger end and some like real heavy hitters in the adult cast, which is something a lot of YA movies do. I think of like, you know, a Harry Potter where they have like basically British acting royalty with unknown younger actors.
Yeah.
You know, Jennifer Lawrence was completely unknown at the time of the Hunger Games, and she was surrounded by, you know, Woody Harrelson and Donald Sutherland as Snow, like just really good actors around her.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's the movie's a mixed bag for me, and that's how you're feeling too.
Yeah, I thought it was good, not great. For me, and I think for me, it's because of how much I like the book. If the book hadn't been so good, I think the movie probably would have landed higher for me.
Yeah.
I thought Tom Blythe, right? It's Tom Blythe.
Tom Blythe, yeah.
I think. I thought his performance was good, not great. And I don't think that's anything to do with his acting. I think that's the way the character was written for the movie, because you lost a lot of the nuance. And when the nuance was missing for me, it just, even though I think he acted well and was a good portrayal of the evil parts of Snow, I didn't get any of the Anakin-ness of the teetering with him. It was evil the whole time. That felt like it was missing. Thought the music was great. I thought it was super well written. I thought it was super interesting how they incorporated that, especially in District 12. Back like when, you know, in Act 3, I thought that whole sequence of, you know, him seeing her, the music playing, it just being like fun and lively, but like the connection was there. I really felt the connection at that part. I really liked some of the shots they had, you know, when they go back to the hub and then Corio and Sejanus are sitting at like different tables. They're next to each other, but there's a gap that feels like it keeps widening as the camera shot goes in. That was really cool. I had one listener reach out. We were talking about it and they said, not going to lie, I love the music. I'm here for a good sing along. I definitely think some of those songs are bangers. Like the soundtrack was great because of that. I also thought the reaping scene was really, really well done. It was so reminiscent of the reaping scene in the first Hunger Games, but at the same time, completely different. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but the visuals, I was like, I was right back into that trilogy. And that's like what I was saying about the book is putting me right back into a world that I remember. And I thought they did a really good job there. I was a little nervous when they were blowing through it, though. I was like, are they going to skip this? I was going to be angrier than a Cowboys fan when they lose in the first round of the playoffs every year. Like I was getting ready to flip out, and I'm glad I waited because they nailed it with that scene for me. So I do think the movie did a lot of things really well. I thought, again, especially the adult performances, all my best casting choices are in there, because I thought the supporting cast of this movie was perfect. I don't have any flaws with anything, you know, Viola Davis or Peter Dinklage, or why am I blanking on the name of Lucky Flickerman?
Jason Schwartzman.
I thought they played their roles perfectly. No flaw in the entire time. So again, to sum it up, movie was good, not great. I don't think it was better than the original trilogy movies, but I don't think it's still a value add. And I'm glad it's out there, and it's it's good. I guess that's all I got, you know?
Yeah, something you mentioned with the original Reaping, which I think is something that was fun for both book and movie, was that they had the whole Hunger Games down to a science by the time we got to the original trilogy of books and movies, where and that's, you see why Snow is that way and exerts that level of control over all of these aspects. But at this time, this is still, they're in their 10th and they do not have this down. And, you know, everything's kind of sloppy with the reaping. Everything is kind of sloppy with how they carry out the Hunger Games. And I thought it was really fun to see the Hunger Games at this point in time where they don't have it down yet. And it's almost like the tributes are getting away with so much more than they do in the OG trilogy, because they're still working out the kinks in so many ways.
That's a great point. And you know what I would be interested to see, and I need to verify this, but I'm pretty sure Mags wins the 11th Hunger Games. So right after all of this cheating and all of this, shenanigans that went on with Snow, boy, not a good way to say that is shenanigans, but that's the word I went with.
Yeah.
I think Mags wins the next one, and I would be really curious to see what happened in the 11th Hunger Games. Or
Who's
not even
Mags?
Mags is the District 4 tribute who doesn't speak in the original.
Oh, okay.
She was the mentor of
yes.
Finnick's mentor.
That is cool.
And she's the one who volunteered, she volunteers to go back into the 75th games. And ultimately, why I am blanking on how she did it, but she saves the life of the main cast at one point.
Okay. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think something with her walking into part of the woods so that it wouldn't go after them. Whatever was chasing them wouldn't. What a character! But Max,
I think
it's either the 11th or the 12th, so it would have been like right after, and it would have been a spot where now that Koryo's back and working as a game maker or an assistant game maker, intern game maker, whatever that position was, would have played a big part of that. And I'm super curious to get like a short story there.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned that you liked that really did not work for me was the music. I don't want to say I hated the music,
Randy,
but it did not work for me. And that is nothing against like the actual singing. Like Rachel Zegler is an incredible singer, like no doubt. I think it was just a little different than what I thought the genre of music was going to be. I was reading Lucy Gray as almost kind of a Amy Winehouse-esque type of singer, like a little rough around the edges, a little more gritty, smoky sort of bar type of singer. And I mean, it's not her fault. Like Rachel Zegler just looks like a Disney princess. And like the music was like just more country folksy. And I also, I'll spoil it. Like I don't like country music. So it just didn't really work for me. And I found myself just like, and that's not just like a musical thing in movies, because there's some musicals I really like a Les Mis or a La La Land. Like I enjoy those movies. But for some reason, the music was tough for me to sit through in this one. I did not like it. Outside of the hanging tree kind of slaps.
I thought the music in the hub was great. I there's the door. You can walk out.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I think that it was better in the movie than I had read it. To be honest, that was a real value add for me, was the way they portrayed the music. I didn't realize I was walking into Jersey Boys. I thought they were going to cut a lot of that out, but it's like I was like, oh, it's what are we doing? And just a lot of singing, a lot more singing than I thought.
Yeah. What in your mind was what they had to get really right, kind of converting this from book into movie? If you think of sort of the big beats of when you read this for the movie to function, what did those have to be?
There are two things I have. One is the visuals. The visuals of the Capitol and 12 and the world they built in that trilogy, you needed to not only match it, but build on it somehow. And if you didn't do it, it was going to fall flat for me. I think they did it. I know one of our categories this time is best world building, so I'll save any future comments. The other thing is you needed to make me believe that the relationship between Koryo and Lucy was real. And to the point about losing the internal monologue and the nuance and having Snow as this more evil character the whole time in the movie, it didn't work for me. And that's why this movie couldn't be great in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I mean, you have to buy Lucy and Koryo's relationship. And
did you?
I did not.
Okay.
especially in the movie. I just kept thinking, why the hell does Lucy like this guy? like,
Fair.
like it. I just didn't totally buy it, and it was nothing with the way either of them kind of, I think, acted
Agreed.
here. I thought Tom was great. We watched, a little bit ago, Rachel Zegler. The only thing I know her from was West Side Story, which I thought she was excellent in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even just chemistry. It's just like, I was like, why would she be into this guy? Like he seems so completely different than what she values, from what we read of her. And it just really didn't work for me. And I think Rachel Zegler, she might have been miscast in this. And again, that's not a slight at her. I think it was either miscast or the role was just written in the movie in a way that the relationship was not believable to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think they both acted well. And I think it's the way the characters had to be written, because you lose a lot of that nuance to why she likes him. I think, and this is actually something the book did well, and I should have mentioned this there. In the book, you really get the sense of it's a trauma bond, that they're both going through this crazy
totally
thing, especially Lucy, right? Like Lucy's is way different than what Corio's going through, but it's this definite trauma bond and this trauma connection. And then when you get to part 3, a lot of the conversations they have, coupled with Snow's internal monologue about, the morality of the games and why the Capitol should be in control or should not be in control, you learn that they're very different people with those very different values, which leads to the end of the book. I lost that in the movie. I did. It didn't. Part 3 felt flat not because of the actors. I thought they did a great job. It's just the way the characters had to be written. A lot more of it could be portrayed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I honestly felt that it just felt so abrupt. Snow's sort of act 3 in the movie and the decisions he makes. And even, when we went to see this, my fiance said the same thing. She was just like, it felt like he turned so fast in the movie version, where they even softened him, I think more so in the movie than the book in the beginning. And it's, it's what you mentioned. You just don't get that inner monologue to know what he's really thinking through all this. And it just it felt a little out of left field, I think, if you're just watching the movie, of why he makes the decisions he does at the end.
Interesting. And I don't disagree with your point, but I did sit in the theater after I watched it just to hear what people were saying, kind of like group one conversations. I don't know if that's weird or not, but that's what I did. And I heard 2 distinct conversations where people really liked the movie and the characters, but hadn't read the book. And I'm wondering, if we had consumed the content in the reverse way, would we have felt that way about Snow's character and part 3 specifically?
Yeah, very well could be, and, she works with someone, with people who are more in the Gen Z era. And all she's been talking about is this is a hit with them. The generation just below us, loves this. And that's I'm not saying that as a slight at them. I also loved things like this when I was that age. I'm not saying they'll even grow out of it, but it's just a hit with them. It's really working for that target demographic. And that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. I'm glad that stories like this are getting picked up and loved. But it just didn't completely work for me. And that's okay.
That is okay.
But it just didn't work.
Anything else you wanted to hit before we go to the background and then to the categories?
Now let's hit the background. We mentioned at the top, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes doesn't contain the Hunger Grams, the Hunger Games, colon, that the movie does.
Branded cookie.
Yeah.
Hunger Grams.
Yeah. Sounds, yeah. I think it's just because it's a little past lunch and I'm hungry. I felt like with the movie, they were trying to announce this is a Hunger Games movie, so we got to put it in the title. But this was released May of 2020 by Scholastic, written, like we said, by the author Suzanne Collins. It appears from accounts that this might have been driven by Lionsgate, the studio for the franchise. This is new, so we can cover both here. But there was a Variety article in 2017 that the CEO of Lionsgate said that the studio was not ready to roll credits, sweet pun, my dude, on the Hunger Games and Twilight.
Oh no!
And
Is
I
there
said,
another
first,
Twilight entry?
literally my note, I was like, dear God, please roll credits on Twilight.
Do not make
Like-
Robert Pattinson do another bad movie. He's too good of an actor.
I know. Yeah, it's literally like Toby coming back to the office, like Michael Scott screaming no.
No!
Um,
No!
yeah. Though this was a shareholders call, so I think he's just signaling to Wall Street like, hey, we still have more profitable things that we can squeeze out of these franchises. Lionsgate, honestly, not a super old studio. They only go back to 97, and their first big hit was American Psycho. But, it kind of seems, in my non-expert opinion, that they have like really struck gold with some big YA franchises specifically. And that was Twilight catapulted them, I think,
Yeah.
in those early 2000s. And then they, hit the well again with the Hunger Games in the early 2010s. And then actually they have the John Wick franchise now.
Did they also do the Maze Runner and the Divergent?
They did
series?
Divergent.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think Maze Runner. I thought Maze Runner was Legendary. Let me see. I'm just going to type that in now.
It might be. Those were the last two YA franchises that I could think of after the ones you named, like the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was this period in time where YA was like the thing to adapt, like for sure. And I mean, we were, like you said, we were getting Divergent, we were getting Maze Runner and this was all after Harry Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games, all of these were hitting. It's like they were finding any youth novel possible. Production company. Now, this was distributed by 20th Century Fox. Yeah. No Lionsgate on this one, but they were Divergent.
Okay.
I mean, and back to the book, this is coming from a Deadline article. It was announced in 2019 that Lionsgate was working with Suzanne on a new novel in the Hunger Games world that they wanted to convert into the movie. So it reads a little bit like, hey, Suzanne, if you want to write another book, we'll make it a movie and you'll probably get a nice check out of it. It's like, honestly, how this reads.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that they were mentioning in the 2017 article that they were thinking about starting writers' rooms on new Hunger Games ideas. So who knows? Maybe Suzanne was also like, yo, this is sort of my territory here. Like, if you're going to do something, let me write it. Okay. And I'm sure also as the author of her world, she probably thinks about this stuff a lot and has many ideas bubbling around. And this is maybe just one of the few that has like really caught her interest and attention.
Okay. I like it.
But she knocked this book out really fast because if they were talking in 2019 and announcing that, this book came out in 2020. It was May of 2020, a few months into the pandemic. So it was a virtual release. And they announced then that this was slated for a 2022-2023 movie release, which obviously got pushed back to late 2023.
I'm wondering if that didn't mean that she was working on a book, they found out about it, and that's when they talked to her about making it a movie or getting like an advanced copy of it so they could start writing it for screen.
Yeah, could be. That's probably a more positive perspective. I think I'm being a little cynical in Lionsgate's involvement here. I mean, that's fine. Like, you have a great franchise, you own the IP. Of course, they're going to want to go back to the well. Like, I get it. That's how the sausage gets made. 2023, obviously this movie Adaptation comes out. It's directed by Francis Lawrence, who directed 3 of the OG Hunger Games movies. So Gary Ross did the first movie, working very closely with Suzanne. And then Francis Lawrence, the director of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, took From Catching Fire on through the series.
Okay.
he's got a real slim sort of filmography. His other biggest one was I Am Legend. Something we
Great
could
movie,
cover.
though.
Yeah, something we could cover on here. I've not read the book, but I've heard very good things.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he was involved in this franchise, and this ran for a while. So most of his time seemed to have been on the Hunger Games movies. Book reception, pretty positive overall. 3.94 on Goodreads. On Bookmark, it's pretty positively reviewed, which is kind of like a meta aggregator of reviews. Sales were solid. I mean, 500,000 copies in the first week. So this book sold a lot. I couldn't find anything in terms of how many copies it has sold to date, like literally nothing. But I just saw a lot of news articles on its initial release.
Wow.
And movie-wise, I think the reviews have been generally mixed.
Okay.
But generally positive, I would say. Like skews, like nobody's like, I haven't seen a lot of people say like, wow, this is absolutely awful. I think a lot of people are like in the camp of where we are to even more favorable of like, yeah, this is pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
they did a decent job with this. It's got a 3.6 on Letterboxd. Like I'm saying, I think it's playing pretty well to, younger generations, which is awesome. Like it's always good to get younger people out at the movie theaters, Boomer Randy comment of the episode. And box office wise, worldwide, we're recording this in January. I know what's today, the 15th. This is sitting at 331 million, which is number 17 in terms of box office for 2023 releases.
Okay.
A little bit lower. The budget was $100 million budget on IMDb, which means the budget is probably $200 million. So
yeah, including marketing and all that.
Yeah, still not bad. Like profitable.
Very cool.
Do you have any idea what the box office was for the Hunger Games movie?
I can look it up. Oh, the first Hunger Games was $695.2 million.
Yeah, I mean that was massive.
You want
like massive,
and then the Catching Fire was $865 million.
Mockingjay trail off.
Mockingjay Part 1 was $661.4 million. Yeah. And then Hunger Games.
And I'll be honest, I'm not even sure if I have seen Mockingjay Part 2, the movie.
And then Mockingjay Part 2 was also 661, it says.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so this is like a little around, 275 million less? It's also a different time. That's pre-pandemic box office numbers.
Right. Though Mockingjay Part 2 came out in 2015. So, especially the earlier
almost
one,
10 years ago now.
Yeah, people were going to the movies a lot more, 10, 15 years ago than they are now.
Yeah. I mean, and those movies probably had to make that much. I'm sure by the time it got to the end, even just the budgets for salaries had blown up after some of these actors were solidified in their roles. I don't really have a ton of behind the scenes stuff on this one. This is 1, brand new. 2, it was being marketed during the writers and the actors strike. So even though I think this actually had some sort of exception that they could market this, there's just not a lot of behind the scenes sort of interesting tidbits on this that maybe will come out over time. Anything else you have on background?
Nah, nothing.
All right. Yeah. Let's hit the rapid fire questions. Pew pew.
Pew pew pew. Okay, I've got 3 for you today, Randy. The first 2, I want 1-word answers, nothing more. The last one, if you do want to elaborate, I'll allow it, but I will start playing the Oscar hurry off music if you take too long.
Cool.
Who is a better host, Lucky or Caesar Flickerman?
Lucky.
Who is the Who is the better capital mentor, Snow or Effie?
Effie was Elizabeth Banks, right?
Yes.
Snow.
Okay. This is the last one. So if you need to elaborate here, I'll allow it. Suzanne Collins is famously deliberate with the names she gives her characters. Snow and Prim are good examples. Cornelius, nope. Coriolanus Snow is named after Shakespeare's play Coriolanus, in which the main character supported the power of aristocrats over the common people. Primrose, as Prim was named, is a flower that is said to have special healing powers. So you kind of get their characters that way.
Yeah.
Can you think of any new characters from this show, or I'm sorry, this movie, that may have had a name with a deeper meaning?
First off, I just want to say that all of these names sound like you asked ChatGPT to write bad Harry Potter names. Like, I'm reading this book and I'm like, is Suzanne fucking with me right now? Like, what are these names? Like, they were so ridiculous at times.
Yeah.
And like, it's also part of the camp and charm. Like, I say it half in jest because, I love it. Like, it's funny. But some of them are just like absolutely wild. In terms of deeper meanings, I'm sure Tigris has some sort of deeper meaning that I'm not intelligent enough to know.
I think it's Tigris.
Is it?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, like, I was in the movie theater and I'm like, that's how you say this?
I literally write it down phonetically when I watch the movies. Is like, this is how you said. I had to do that for everybody in Dune as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you still did a great job.
Yeah. Well, I did with the characters, not so much the director, but
yeah. Yeah.
Me and DB are going to be buds. Just you wait.
Yeah. Tigress. Yeah. She's definitely has some sort of deeper meaning that I'm not smart enough to know. Is it Sejanus? No idea how to say his name.
Might be.
I'm sure he's got a deeper meaning. Who is it?
The one that's jumping out to me, and I might be reading into something that's not there, is Dean Highbottom.
Why is that?
Because and specifically I forget Dean Highbottom's first name, but specifically Highbottom. The way I took that is, if you think about that character, he's on top. He's a very high level capital player for doing something that he hates, and mentally and morally, he's at rock bottom. Creating something as the Hunger Games, and especially when you hear the story about how he's credited with creating the Hunger Games, I think the Highbottom represents, where he stands in the Capitol versus how he feels about it.
Yeah. This is a good time to let you know that when I was reading this book, I thought his first name was Dean. And I'm reading this and I'm like, one, who is this guy that is just always at the school? And it was not until the very end that I realized, oh no, he is the dean of the school. I felt like such a moron when I figured that out.
This is Velociraptors are real moment. Like,
yeah, literally. I was like, I think it's Casca. I've realized, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought he was just a dean, like
James Dean, like just the name. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, there were a lot of things where my memory was fuzzy on the Hunger Games, but I was reading and I'm like, this feels familiar, and I'm sure that this has some deeper reference that I just can't quite remember at the time.
Yeah,
but that's a good shout on Highbottom. Category wise, you want to talk best scenes first?
I mean, we just talked about Highbottom. Should we start with best casting?
Yeah, let's do casting.
Drum roll, please. And the nominees for best casting in the Songbird and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. My bad. Viola Davis as Dr. Gall. Peter Dinklage as Dean Highbottom. Not first name Dean.
Yeah.
Jason Schwartzman as Lucky Flickerman. Who you got, Randy, and why?
I would just say Dinklage again, because you called him Drinklage. Peter Drinklage.
I don't know how It like auto corrected to an R there. Okay.
That was amazing.
Do the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
And the nominees for Best Casting in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes are Viola Davis as Dr. Gall, Peter Dinklage as Dean Highbottom, Jason Schwartzman as Lucky Flickerman. Randy, who you got?
I think this is a runaway win for Jason Schwartzman as Lucky Flickerman.
Really?
He absolutely killed it.
Did.
Where in a movie where you're dealing with child murder, you need the person who adds the levity.
Okay.
In the original Hunger Games, we kind of had that with Effie. You know, Elizabeth Banks played that role. Even Caesar Flickerman played that role. But Lucky just absolutely killed me in this movie. Specifically the scene where I think it's the very start of the Hunger Games. And it's where everybody's running around and somebody's getting stabbed with a trident. I don't even know what's going on. And someone in the audience where they're watching this, all the tributes are together watching this with Lucky. And one of the kids throws up. And Lucky's like watching the scene unfold. And at the end of it, he's like, that was absolutely disgusting. And then looks away from the TV and looks at the kid and says, if you ever throw up again, and like tells them off for throwing up when everyone thought he was like talking about watching literal children murder each other on television.
Yeah.
But just like his comedic timing in this movie was just so good. He was by far my favorite part of the movie. What about you?
I mean, you're giving the award, so I guess Jason Schwartzman's getting the Oscar or mock Oscar, whatever we're calling it these days. I just did want to give a shout out. Viola Davis, I thought, played the quintessential capital evil that we remember. And I thought that performance was standout. I thought she was fantastic. And then with Peter as Dean Highbottom, I think he absolutely nailed that sorrow that character needed, that, you know, the heavy weight of what they have done.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he really nailed that. It was exactly what I pictured Dean Highbottom to be. And he brought it to life in a way that I appreciated, which is, you know, why I had to give him a nod here.
Yeah. There were shades of Tyrion when Tyrion is in his drinking phase.
Yes. Yeah. That's
shades of it for sure.
Yeah. But also different enough that I don't feel like we were watching Tyrion here.
No, not at all.
But
not at all.
Agreed.
Yeah, this was definitely a different role for Viola Davis. She seemed like she was having a blast doing it. And I that's kind of how I felt about the original Hunger Games too, was these adult actors just seem like they're having a lot of fun with this. It's something different. So yeah, I enjoyed all of them. In the younger cast, because we haven't really talked too much about Sejanus or any of them, or even really Lucy in depth. Did those castings work for you?
Yes, but not good enough to make this category. I thought Snow, Lucy, and Sejanus were all cast well. I think where Sejanus shined was in the first two parts. He did a really good job with those like dead eyes, just the sorrow he's feeling, you know, watching the districts have to go through this, especially knowing the District 2 tribute. Those dead eyes really worked for me. I actually lost him a little bit in part 3. I thought Snow was played well but just like, it was just like an evil Snow the whole time because of the way the character was written.
Yeah.
Acted very well with how it was written. Didn't agree with how it was written. And Lucy worked for me. It was good. But I think when I didn't have that connection to Snow that she had, it kind of had nothing to do with her actress or acting and how she was portrayed. It just, I don't know, it didn't bring it to the level of the other 3 that we just mentioned.
Yeah, you know who I really missed in this as a supporting character? In the books, Sejanus's mom is very important.
Yes.
She really has a soft spot for Choreo. And you also have this dynamic where, because Sejanus comes from the districts and their family's trying to build status in the capital, and his mom is almost really just nostalgic for their district days. She's just such a sweetheart. And I think that like that type of role of just like sort of pure goodness doesn't really exist in the movie in some ways. And I really missed how she interplays not only with Sejanus, but how she really brings some warmth out of Koryo too. So
Yeah.
I really missed his mom.
That's a good call out too.
Yeah.
I have another one that I'll cover in worst adaptation choices, I think.
Yeah.
From you, what are your best scenes from the book and or movie?
I've got a few nominees for best scenes, and these cover both book and movie.
Okay.
And
Do I pick one from the book and one from the movie, or am I picking one?
picking one. You're picking one here.
Okay.
And you can feel free to write in any that you think I missed, but I've got 3 that I think really worked for me.
Okay.
One, I think no idea how to say her name again, Clemencia. The scene in the book where they go to Dr. Gall's laboratory and with the homework, and she gets attacked by the snake. I thought that scene was anxious. It was thrilling. It was great in suspense.
Yeah.
And you also know that snakes are in the title of this book, and you're wondering how that these are going to show up at a later time, because the book isn't called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes for this one scene with a side character. 2, the part we already discussed, when Lucy tells Koryo you could start by thinking I can actually win.
Okay.
3, this straddles book and movie, but when Lumina is saving Marcus, and by saving him, giving him a just quick death when he is hanging there. I thought that was a really powerful scene in the book. And I think it was powerful in the movie, not quite as powerful for me. So I'm going to go with those 3 scenes. Do you have any others that you would add to that list?
Yes. This is a book scene. When Arachne Crane is killed by her tribute in the zoo.
Very good.
In the book, not in the movie. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah.
That one I would add. And I think the reaping. I think the movie did a very good job. I think the book did a little bit better. But when, with the snake and Lucy Gray, and that would also get a nom, in my opinion. I thought you had great noms though. They were great scenes. And I think I'm going to have to, of your nominations, I think I'm going to have to award it to the snakes.
Yeah.
They are. Okay. First off, let's talk about how snakes are literal dinosaurs. They've been around since the beginning of time, and they survive. And you don't do that if you're not at top of the food chain. These apex predators are terrifying. This little tiny baby snake bites you, and it can kill an elephant with the venom that it distributes. Come on, like, this is science fiction. Real snakes, I feel like, should be science fiction. I hate them. I can't stand snakes. So when they incorporated it, that is my nightmare, Randy. This is my nightmare, is that scene. Yeah. And then especially when they bring the snakes down and they're all over and they're chasing everybody. Ooh, Randy.
Yeah.
That did something to me. I was scarred. I was like, not okay reading those scenes and then watching those scenes. So I got to give it to that scene.
Yeah, it's to me a scarier version of, I think in the original Hunger Games, it was sort of those mutts that they had in the arena.
Yeah.
Where they're all kind of standing on that elevated platform, and people are taken out by these mutts that are also like imbibed with the personalities of like the tributes that have died. It's just like, what the hell is going on here? But somehow the snakes are a little bit scarier. And I'm not even like a scared of snakes guy, but still not something you want to be trapped in an arena with that are designed to kill you.
I don't want to see a gardener snake in my backyard.
Yeah.
So like this was, yeah, I gotta give it there.
Yeah. Why do you think the scenes we did not nominate Sejanus's death and we did not nominate Lucy winning? Both of those, they just in the movie they
fell flat.
actually they just fell a little flat.
Yeah. They fell flat in the movie, and I think the scenes that you nominated specifically, they worked well in the movie and in the book. And they worked better in one versus the other, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That it has to be that, right? They can't be equals, but well, I guess they could, but
Yeah.
Those scenes in particular worked well in both, and I think that's why they stand out.
Mhm.
And I think you were absolutely right to include those scenes and not ones that worked in one and not the other, because the scene had to work in both to be great.
Yeah.
For the purposes of the adaptation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. You want to talk about a worst adaptation choice?
Yeah, I've got 3 noms here for you.
Yeah, let's hit it.
One that I just mentioned in the movie, the worst adaptation choice was not doing a good job of showing Arachne Crane tormenting her tribute. Thank you. Yeah. That was such a pivotal moment in the book for me, and it fell so flat in the movie that I was really disappointed in that.
Yeah.
My second worst adaptation choice was killing Clemencia instead of allowing her to live. And there was nothing more terrifying in the book than when not only did Snow visit her in the hospital, and that was scary, but when she came back and then she saw the snakes in real life, that showed that, again, to Viola Davis, like that quintessential capital evil of like you need to play their rules or you are going to live a life of horror. And then the third was removing the black market from the capital, and not even mentioning Pluribus, I'm going to call him. I don't know how to pronounce that one because it wasn't in the movie. I thought that was a real missed opportunity because, one, it was a value add to me. It added a lot of depth to the capital and the war in particular. It explained how Lucy Gray got a guitar and she gets guitar strings in District 12. And it was a good spin-off opportunity, honestly. So for those reasons, those 3 are my nominees. I don't know if you have any others that were worst adaptation choices, but those were my noms.
I think your nominees hit mine. So I'm going to give an answer and then maybe an honorable mention later. But I think your Clemencia, your Arachne, is that what you call her? These names are ridiculous.
Arachne. Arachne.
Yeah, Arachne. This represents, I think, a bigger thing that went on with the movie for me, where they really, to me, meaninglessly changed some motivations or examples. And this is one where she, in the book, is deliberately messing with her tribute. And she kind of does in the movie a little bit, but it's not as just pure evil in the book, where she's withholding this food and like really toying with her starving tribute. So I think that's my winner. I think that is also represented in another way with what I described as my best scene in the movie with Clemencia. She does this taking credit for the homework, which gets her attacked by the snakes, where in the book, that is not at all what happens. She's distraught heading in to give in her homework with Corio and is saying, how did you even write this homework? Like, we just saw our classmate die yesterday.
Yeah.
And Corio himself offers up that, hey, I'll just cover for us. Like, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And they're best friends. Like, not best friends, but they're very good childhood friends, him and Clemencia. Yeah. And in the movie, we see her like trying to like take credit and being like really snarky about it. And I thought it was just like these meaningless changes that I think made the characters worse.
Okay.
Like, that is a perfect opportunity in the movie to show how Corio sees this as an opportunity to build trust with Clemencia, to give in this great report to Dr. Gall. And he's like really playing this like more deeply strategic game here. And also just like completely psychopath, not even fazed by his student or his classmate being murdered the prior day.
Yeah.
And they just like totally changed that. And I think that the scene with Arachne, I think those were just like really bad choices that added a lot of depth to the characters in the book.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I really don't have anything to add. I think you nailed that. You really nailed that there.
You know what I think was a good adaptation choice? And I think the reason for this was also their sort of parental rating in the movie.
Mhm.
But I really did not need to see the parading of the body of the one tribute
Yes.
who stabbed Arachne, I think, where they like hung him up on like a crane claw and like drove him down the street with like all the other tributes like locked in a cage underneath him.
Yeah, he's the one who escaped in the bombings.
Oh, I thought that was Marcus who gets hung up in the arena.
Didn't they parade Marcus?
No, they paraded, I think, the one who stabbed Arachne.
You're right. I think you're right.
When they drove through and Gloria was like singing, I was just like, that was a deeply dark scene.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't need to see that.
You're right. That was a good choice. That was a good omission.
I mean, I think if they were making an R-rated version of this movie, you know, that's something that's going to be included, like a literal horror.
Yeah.
But for what they were going for, the tone of this movie, I think that's just like a little too far for me personally. So I would say that was a pretty good adaptation choice. One thing that I was expecting them to illuminate a little more on was the bombing, because you just mentioned it. Do you think the bombing was an inside job?
No, I don't. I think that was genuinely something the rebels did. But I will actually say, now that I think back to best scene, I would have nominated that one again, because I thought the way they portrayed that in the movie was stellar. That's the word. Stellar. I thought that was one spot where I thought the movie, not one, there's others, but one shining example of where I thought the movie was a real value add to the book was that scene in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, for some reason when I was reading it, I just really thought Dr. Gall was behind the bombing to add some nuances to the arena, to get these mentors feeling even more connected to their tributes and their success, that I really thought it was an inside job and we were going to get more on that in both the book and movie, and we just didn't. So I'm just out here tinfoil hat conspiracies that just didn't pan out.
That one, it does make sense though, because there are scenes of, where people are getting sick of the Hunger Games. Like they're losing that hatred for the district, and that's a really good way to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been, but I could also see that, like, if you're the rebels and you're taking another shot at the Capitol, why would you not do it there?
Yeah.
When you know that you have the potential to take out Capitol citizens as well, like these shining Capitol citizens as well.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it is. And I think what you just mentioned with the people losing their lust for the Hunger Games at this point, that was a really bit of interesting sort of world building for me. What were some of the best world building sort of nominees you had? How'd you like that fucking segue?
Randy's working on his segue. Okay. So 2 things that I haven't mentioned already that visually really added to the world for me is the classroom. and the way they set up the classroom
Mhm.
added a lot to the world that they live in. And then the lab being something straight out of science fiction. It almost looked like a museum, but it was a lab, and that was dope. And then actually that very last scene in the movie where you see that the Capitol's still being rebuilt, you see all the cranes and everything in the background. That was also a very good choice, I think. So
Mhm.
visually, world building, those were things that I would add in this category. Did you have anything that we haven't talked about or that was other than those that really did it for you in the world of the Hunger Games?
I really liked that the level of tech that we get by the original trilogy of Hunger Games,
Mhm.
especially with how the mentor interacts with the tribute, how
Mhm.
the fan base in the Capitol, fan base is such a disgusting way to describe this in the Capitol,
Yeah.
bets and gambles on this and supports and loves tributes and where that gets to.
You're right.
I loved seeing the start of that. That was really
Yeah.
pushed by Snow with these ideas he had, and I was not expecting this in the movie, but just kind of the hilarity of the way they deliver the packages. Like those things were just like a fucking mess. like flying in like literal weapons
Yeah.
into the arena. It added some humor in there of just like how bad those were. But it was really cool to see the first sort of try towards making this a little bit more uh, grand as an event. And
Yeah.
I really love that bit of world building.
That was good. Yeah.
Anything else you had in world building that you appreciated?
No, nothing to add there. Should we
I was just
go?
gonna say I liked what you said earlier about the Mockingjays and the Jabberjays. I remember them being important, but I couldn't remember why they were important.
Yeah.
And then I started to click at the end. The only other minor thing of world building that I liked is something that vividly stuck out to me from the Hunger Games was Snow with sort of the rose and always wasn't his mouth like always like dripping with the rose like blood or something in the Hunger Games. Like I thought he would always wipe his mouth and there would be like rose. He would be red because he was like eating these roses.
Oh, that was blood, man. He was like
Was
sick.
it blood?
Yeah, he was like
Okay.
really. Yeah.
Got it. But I just remember the rose connection with him, and
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I liked understanding, why that was important to him from his childhood with
Definitely.
Grandma planting them on the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's hit the villain and then who won. Obvious choice, real villain, the Capitol. I mean, and the citizens of the Capitol for allowing this to continue. I mean, it's easy to point the finger at Gaul and the president and President Snow, but I think it's the broader acceptance of what's happening and then the just absolute lack of morality and not only rooting for it, but betting on it and what the games became. I mean, just morally corrupt citizens of the Capitol are the enemy.
I think like in generalities, I mean, I think when people either blatantly act ignorant or feign ignorance to maintain positions of status and power rather than calling out things that they know to be corrupt and wrong. I mean, definitely the people in the Capitol. I think Dr. Gall sucks, big time as well.
Yeah.
And is a huge villain.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, there's some obvious ones.
Yeah.
Who won the book for you?
Fans of the Hunger Games. Book was awesome. It's real value add, real great world building, got you some new stuff. It took what you knew and built upon that in a very excellent way. So the fans won the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Lucy for me, she was electric in the book.
She was awesome.
Like 100% electric. Best part of it all for me was her interactions with everyone around her. The way Suzanne wrote her was extremely compelling and you wanted to root for her. And it also added more depth to the world even outside of the districts, that there were little smaller factions of people that were kind of roaming in other areas. Really cool stuff.
Definitely.
So Lucy was just a huge win for me. That unfortunately, again, it's nothing that Rachel Zegler did, but just something that didn't totally translate for me to the movie.
That's very fair.
Who do you have for the movie? Who won the movie?
Movie theaters. I think anytime we can get a blockbuster that's not, I realize that this is also IP based and part of a super successful trilogy, but I still think the more we can get success, like big successful movies that aren't Marvel in theaters, people are going to go back. The experience is going to be good, and we're going to get moments like the Barbenheimer blockbuster and this, and those are just really cool things to see that are still happening. Because quite frankly, we might live to see a time where people don't go to the movies anymore. So while I'm here, I'm enjoying
Boomer Randy is converting you slowly but surely.
It's you're planting seeds in my mind every time we have a conversation. So
yeah, I didn't even have to say it. I don't even have to get on my movie theater soapbox. Lucky won the movie for me. Lucky was dynamite. Just the movie doesn't work without someone like Lucky in it to just make you laugh a little bit. And Jason Schwartzman just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And had a blast doing it. Just chewing the scenery. You want to move on to closing?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Get out of here.
Anything, any final hot takes, thoughts you want to get out before we move on to ranking this?
No, but we did change the ranking. So do you want to give everybody a heads up of what we're going to do from now on?
Yeah, we're going to add a little bit of structure to the ranking schedule, or not schedule, the ranking structure, where we've created 5 categories, which Nick and I are each going to rank on a scale of, I guess we'll go 0 to 5. And then we'll total our scores, and that will give us a combined score for this ranking, which we can then use to kind of slot things in an order. So our 5 categories are going to be casting and performances, plot execution or the faithfulness to the source material. The third is world building and aesthetics. The fourth is soundtrack. The fifth is legacy and standalone appeal. For something like this, it's not super old, so we can't really rank legacy yet. So that's why we do standalone. Like, does this work on its own as a piece of art? So we got 5 categories here. So why don't you run me through your scores here for those 5 categories?
Yeah, casting and performances, I gave it a 4. I think you have to separate the performance from what was wrong with the adaptation. Plot execution, 2.5, and that's exactly the opposite of that there for me. World building and aesthetics, I got to give it a 4. Wasn't quite a 5 for me, so I'm gonna give it a 4. Soundtrack, I love the music. I got to give that a 4 as well. And then as a standalone piece of art in this franchise, I'll give it a 3.5, just based on what I know other people who watched it have said. So my total there is an 18 out of 25. That's pretty decent.
Yeah, it's pretty decent. I'm not too far off in most areas. Yeah, mine, casting and performances, I'm going to 3.5. I think that's mainly I enjoyed the performances, and I think once again they did a great job of bringing in some real big A-list actors to do some of the older roles, and I thought that just always works well in a YA. So I loved it. Plot execution, faithfulness to source material, I give it a 2. I think that they missed a lot of the big beats of the adaptation, and it just quite didn't work for me. And I think it could be a little bit confusing and jarring heading into that final third. World building and aesthetics, best thing they did. I think that this is a 4. Book wise, movie wise, just it looked pretty good. Some of the CGI was meh, but I think overall the world looked good. It was fun being there. Just the ambiance of Lucky and Dr. Gall's lab, all that stuff was really good. Soundtrack, this is just a miss for me. 2 out of 5. Just did not like it, and that is nothing with how these people actually sing. Rachel Zegler is a good singer, but I just did not enjoy this soundtrack. I actually was listening to it while I was working on the notes for this, and I had to turn it off because I just felt like I was listening to the Lumineers in a coffee shop. Legacy and standalone appeal. I gave this a 3 out of 5. I think it's good, and I worry that I shat on this a little too much through this pod, but I genuinely enjoyed the movie. Like, I had a good time with the movie.
Yeah,
I thought the book was really good. Like I said, way better than it had any right to be. And I think converting this to the screen, I think they did a pretty good job. And I had a fun time watching this, and I think other people really enjoyed it. I think some even enjoyed it a lot more than me. But I had fun here. So I gave this a 14.5 out of 25.
Okay.
So adding that up, what does that get us to? 32.5 out of 50?
32.5 out of 50. Yeah.
Nice.
No idea where that ranks on this list. I think a fun little bonus episode to be going back and giving the rest of them this type of ranking to see where it falls.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's gonna end up in the middle.
You think it's going to end up in the middle?
Yeah. I'm going to have it like below Dune, but above Killers, I think, is where it's going to fall.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think that there is everything we've done, a little bit of a gap, and then Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think this is the bottom.
There's
Nick is
no way.
looking at me in disgust.
No way you think this is worse than The Shining as an adaptation.
I think if you look at these categories, I mean, if I think alone about legacy and soundtrack, and maybe even world, like the aesthetics, I think those are really high, at least for me in The Shining.
Randy, I'm giving The Shining a straight 0. It's impossible for it to be below The Shining.
Yeah.
I am floored right now that you would even suggest that.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be an amazing bonus pod because I think giving legacy of The Shining anything other than like a 5 is just egregious. So we'll see. I mean, I thought Killers was, I can't even put these movies in the same world, a Killers of the Flower Moon and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, like just completely different beasts. And this is just so far below that for me, which I know I just said I shat on this movie and I feel bad about that, which I genuinely liked it. Like, I had a good time, but they're just different, way different than me. So we'll see. This is a 32.5 out of 50, and we'll see where that ranks. Yeah, I love this already. This is going to create some great drama between us. So I'm eager for this. You're so disgusted with me.
Projecting at your wedding. That's of The Shining.
Oh man, I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, everybody. Next episode, which, why did I not write this down? What are we covering? Dune Part 2. Yeah, that's because we would have a timely one coming in here. Dune Part 2. This will be released very soon after the movie premieres. So the movie's coming out, March 2nd, I think? 1st?
March 1st.
So yeah, sometime in the 10 days after whenever that Tuesday falls of our next release, we'll be having Dune coming out.
Yeah.
So that will be the next one. If you see that, we're going to shout it out again on our Instagram. Write into us after you see Dune Part 2, or even before, just talking about what you're eager to see. I might actually try rereading the second half of the book because it's just been so long for me. You've read it sooner than me, so I feel like I need to brush up a little bit. Write into us with your thoughts. We mentioned the Instagram Rewatch Play podcast on Gmail at rewatchplaypod@gmail.com. As always, if you have suggestions for future stories, things you'd like to see us cover, let us know. You find us on all your major platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review. 5 stars only. 5 stars only, as those things help more people find the show. I mean, and honestly, just the most important thing you can do is just tell your friends about it. Tell someone that you think likes this kind of nerdy stuff about the show. Thanks to everyone listening. Thanks, Nick, for joining me. And I hope you all never have to listen to the soundtrack again. Take it easy, everyone.